Cows in a Pod, my podcast series, episode 2, where I get to chat with intriguing people who make very interesting choices in the way they choose to live their lives. As the quote in Harry Potter says, it is our choices who show us who we truly are more than our abilities. And today, I'm really excited to interview and chat with my friend Deepa Gopal, who I really admire and respect, who is the founder and CEO of Youngzine. Thank you, Deepa, for coming on my show, and I'm really excited to chat with you.
Thank you, Ramya. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. So to start with, Deepa, could you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you live, what you do, etc., etc.?
Absolutely. So I grew up in India. Part of my childhood was in Delhi, in northern India, and the remaining, my teenage years were in Kuwait. And after I finished my high school in Kuwait at an Indian school, I then came to India to do my undergraduate in electrical engineering. I finished my undergraduate there, and then I came to the U.S. to do a master's in computer engineering. Finished that up, started working in a lot of different companies, starting with, I was a hardware engineer, so I was designing ASICs. So we started out with doing graphics chips, then set-top boxes, and eventually I was working on ASICs that go into networking switches and routers, pretty much, the systems that power the backbone. So that's sort of my journey into my career over the past 17 years. And now I'm here in Cupertino, California, and running Youngzine, which we will talk about more later.
Oh, wow. What a crazy, journey, starting in tech and then ending at Youngzine. So that's what we're really excited about.
Yep.
So what really struck me when I met you was what really affects you on a day-to-day basis. Like, you're moved by a lot of things that I see only in certain people. And that's what I found that's what I connected with you, in that realm. So what made you give up your corporate career? It was flourishing, you had it all. And from what I know, you really were very good at it. So what made you give it up?
Absolutely. So that was a confluence of a lot of things coming together that really pushed me towards that decision. So growing up, Ramya, I was led to believe that I could really do anything that I set my mind to. This was the way that my parents raised us, that no difference between my brother and me. So when I started in the field of tech, I was very often the only woman engineer, because in ASIC design there were really not too many women. But I really didn't think of myself as a woman. It was almost like I took that seat at the table. I felt like I could do anything. But the reality was, the glass ceiling was sort of like right above my head. I thought I had this path really mapped out and where I wanted to be by 30, 40, 50. And then I realized that none of that had really materialized. And then by the time I had a child, then there was this whole thing about juggling work and life. And, that was, again, leaving at 5:30, there was a certain perception that I was not putting in the work, despite the fact that I would go home, put food on the table, get back to working. Pretty much towards the latter part of my 17-year career, I had become a tech lead, which meant, managing teams in India, in China. There was a small team in Ottawa. But despite that, it was the perception which, in fact, the manager even mentioned that to me, that, if you were to stay a little longer, it would show that you're putting in the hours. So it was, early in 2000. So certainly there was, just in terms of my career, what I thought I had envisioned for myself, none of that panned out. And then, of course, juggling both and trying to be good at both and raising a young child, I was just burning at both ends. And something had to give, and that was my health. So I started having sort of a series of health issues, which culminated in a fairly major surgery that forced me into a 3-month bed rest. And that was a time when, I really felt like something had to change. that, I could not go on the way that I was going on. But it also made me reflect on, what is success? The way that I had defined success a certain way, is that really success? Is it about having impact in the world rather than designing, faster chips so people could be on the internet more? I mean, certainly we need all that. But for me, I think the idea of what is fulfilling, what does personal success mean, all those changed. I think it forced me to get into a place where I had to reevaluate all the labels and everything else that I had envisioned for myself. And I'd say that was my wake-up call, and prompted me to rethink about, is this the journey that I want to be on? And so from then on, that was, once we get into why I moved into Youngzine, I think a lot of the seeds were, really the genesis was around at that time. Yes.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that our bodies actually can tell us, right? They're whispering to us constantly.
Yes.
But at some point they have to knock so loudly that.
Correct. Very true. I think that's what I always felt like. Yeah, the universe was giving me these little knocks, and I wasn't listening to it, and so it just gave me this one big, I mean, like, really say, okay, stop. I need you to listen. So I think absolutely that's there, and there's a little voice within us that's also telling us that this is not going anywhere, and I think we're not listening to it because our head is pushing us in a certain direction. And again, all these events have to really force us to take that step back.
Yeah, I can relate to that. There was this incident where I took my kids ice skating, and I was working in tech and teaching music in the evenings, and I dropped my kids off. They went in for their class, and then I just passed out in the car. I don't remember what happened for like an hour.
Oh, wow.
And then I woke up and time had just gone by. So that's because I was so tired. I hadn't slept because work and other things. That was a moment for me. So I can. Right.
Actually, as you're saying, Ramya, I remembered it was my son at the time. He was probably around 9 or so, and I was just working these long hours and hardly having much time for him. And he made this comment which he said, "Mom, I haven't seen you smile for a year." And this is coming from like a 9-year-old child. But when I listened to that, I was like, he's absolutely right. I was just like this hamster on a wheel, just going through the motions. And I really was not, experiencing life and enjoying the moments. And so coming from a child, again, those are all little signs and messages that come to us, right? So
these kids are just amazing.
Right.
They should be ruling the world, not 65-year-olds, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Oh man. Anyway, so when did the idea for Youngzine really come to you? Was it during this period of soul searching, awakening, or was it also before that? Was it something being planted in you before?
I think some of it was there in the sense that I really enjoyed working with children, with young people. And I was volunteering, even as I was working in tech, I was volunteering with Project Hope, which was an organization that was working on early intervention to get kids reading and writing and doing math. Then, there were other programs working with differently abled kids. So I was doing some of that, but I always thought of that as volunteer, and then my tech as sort of my main career. So that was still the mode that I was in. So I'd say it was this forced bed rest. So when that happened, I was really in a place of surrender. I was just literally I sort of talking to the universe saying, okay, I thought I knew what I was supposed to be doing with my life, but everything that I'm trying, it seems like the doors are just closing in on me. What am I supposed to be doing? So I was just in that place of surrender. And I think when we're in that state, that's when we hear these little voices within, the messages within. And so there was something in me that was surfacing that, I'd like to work with, young people. By the time my son was around 10, and I really felt like, there were so many ways we could inspire them and really help them see that they're part of a larger world, that how our world is all sort of connected and interdependent. And so, really kind of building those, working with this age group. And the other thing though was also that, till around age 9, 10, kids are, at least my son, at least, in those days was watching Disney and those channels. But by the time they get to that age where they have they're trying to see themselves as individuals and as part of a larger world. At that age, kids still are very innocent. They still look at things as black and white. And, they're not yet jaded by the world. They're still embracing experiences. So I really wanted to capture that imagination and, work with the age group and inspire them. So that was the sort of things that were surfacing in me. Though I would say that it didn't really translate to Youngzine right away. While those were surfacing, and then I was kind of like, okay, what does this mean? What should I be doing? Yeah. There wasn't much clarity. So I did go back once I recovered, I did go back to tech. And yeah, I did. So I went back, and then, it was just every day there was this voice was getting louder. It was literally, I would drive into work and, there's this voice in my head, and, every cell in my body is screaming, what the heck are you doing? This is not what you're supposed to be doing. So once it just got, so loud that I really had to listen to it, I said, okay, I am going to think of a shift. But coincidentally, something did happen during that time, which is my son was in 5th grade, and he'd had this project that they do country projects in 5th grade where they had to pick up one country. They were assigned, or rather I think it was sort of, from a hat, they had to pick a little chit, and then it depended on what it said. And he had gotten Greece. So what they have to do is write about, the culture and mythology, history, food, and all these different things, which my son was terribly excited about because he was always a fan of Greek mythology and loved history. So he had plenty of information, but he also had to write one current event on Greece. So then he came to me and he said, Mom, our school's resources have, the only event is back in 2002. And this is, we're in 2010. He said, is there anything happening in Greece? So, and that's when I was just, very much in tune with what's happening around the financial crisis that was happening in Greece at the time. And I said, of course, it's, maybe I can find something that explains that in an easy way for a young child, helps them understand what living within a means, even at a country level means, So I was looking for something that would explain GDP and some simple concepts to a 10-year-old. I didn't find anything. So I synthesized an article for him to use for his, as a resource for his project. And I think that is when sort of some bulb clicked within me. It was thinking that, okay, maybe this is what I could be doing. I could be bringing what's happening around the world to children in a very positive and informative, educational way, so that they are able to relate to things that living within means in their own lives as well, and what has to happen at a country level. So those were the sort of things that then happened during that interim when I went back to work. And so by the time I left to start Youngzine, I had much more clarity in terms of the direction that I wanted to go.
That's just amazing. I mean, back in the day, we didn't have any resource, right? For kids, at least. So it's like one of the first. Now there's so much. It's like a jungle out there that it's really difficult to know what is legit, what's not. So something like Youngzine that's been around for a while, and there's this saying that there's, I think, the Y Combinator startup where they say make something people want or make something people need, and this feels like a genuine.
Right, yeah. Came out of a need that I felt for my own child. And then once it started resonating, it's like, okay, yes, there's a need here. And then, of course, from then on, as teachers came in, I saw a bigger need in classrooms as well. So that was, when Youngzine started growing and embracing, the direction that we felt that we needed to go, and we were embracing each of those. And,
yeah, it's so inspiring, really. So, based on what you said, which was a while ago, that you started Youngzine based on this need that Arjun needed. What is, when you see kids, even 10 years ago and kids now, what are the challenges that these kids are facing these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So, since then, I think one of the biggest things is just the amount of information that now kids are being, bombarded with, right? In terms of, if you look at, it's not just news, right? We're seeing news, opinions, fake news, disinformation. There's just so much. And really, I think one of the biggest challenges that I see in raising children is, teaching them how to wade through all this. How do you, analyze and see what is it that makes sense, ask the right kinds of questions, get informed, and make opinions that are grounded in, solid context and data. So you get informed. So those are the kind of one of the biggest challenges that I think is happening. And I'm speaking in terms of, as wearing the Youngzine hat, in terms of what we see with kids, one of the challenges. The other challenge I see is around social media.
So again, it related to the podcast in terms of what choices the kids can make, right? On a day-to-day basis, where they go online and social media, what is that choice that they have to make? Should I spend time on it? Should I post? Should I friend someone? It's everything is a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice. It is a choice. And so, and we know studies have showed how social media, how it gets addictive. Yeah. And kids are young. So again, so that is the other challenge, is how do we teach them to treat social media as a means to an end rather than getting stuck in that. If you're trying to get information, it's a resource. Or, if you're trying to, to not really get pulled into the addictive aspect of it, but really use that as another tool in your set of tools. So I think that's the other challenge that I see that our kids are growing up with between 2010 to now. So my son Arjun was sort of right before that. Yeah. So, he was not yet at a point where social media had taken off. So as a result, he never really did get, hooked to that.
Yeah.
But since then, I think that's those are two things that I see. And then, of course, with the Youngzine direction that we've taken, the whole idea. So again, just to kind of set that context, we started out as a broad news literacy platform, but over the course of the last couple of years, we sort of pivoted to a platform that's more around environment, sustainability, and climate action, and really trying to empower kids with that knowledge. So again, that is an issue that we see as well. I mean, climate anxiety is a real word now. A lot of kids are feeling that. And so again, we felt that, the best antidote is action and inspiring kids to really see, what others are doing, and then to do things in their own communities. So that has been the pivot that we've made. And I guess the whole idea with this path is really helping our kids see, our planet, our Earth as a system where all the different parts are interconnected, and then they sort of all work together in harmony. And then, we can build a sustainable future once we are able to, keep all the systems working in harmony. But, we're now in this whole society where it's all about consumption, extracting more. And at some point, all this is tipping things out of balance, which is sort of what we're seeing. And so again, building that systems understanding and what is our role as stewards of this planet. So those are important concepts that we should really start building in our children as well. And so that's the direction that we are going to. So this is again sparked by a climate protest that we'd gone to 2 years ago. And so that has sort of taken us in this direction. So
that's just so inspiring, because yesterday my son and I, we were just looking through. I was browsing, through CNN, and he came. He said, "That's a news article. Anything can be in the news these days." And it was something about Omicron and what's the future. And then inside the article it says, "We know, but I think we don't know," or something like that. It was just so vague. That even 10-year-old can just wonder. So I think that's what Youngzine does, right? It's able to reach those minds that and start building those concepts early on, where they can start. And if you think about it, it's also telling them, hey, you know what, you have a choice between all of this other stuff and this. So this is what you're going to get, and this is so it's really, really inspiring.
Exactly as you said. At 10 years old, kids know what is real news, what is not. And that's amazing. So that's the whole point with Youngzine was, let's catch them at a point where they're soaking up like sponges. They're soaking all this information. They know how to ask the right kind of questions, and then we need to be giving them engaging them in a platform that is really catering to that. That's
and also what I loved about Youngzine is the kids also contribute, right? So they contribute articles. So how does that work? Like what do children do? So if somebody is watching, they say, hey, you know what, I want to go on Youngzine, and this thing's really keeping me up at night.
No, absolutely.
My younger son comes to me and he's like, for my next birthday I said, oh no, don't start again. He said, I want a baby from the orphanage. That was what he told me. I thought he's going to ask me for a gift. And he said, you have to promise me that, next birthday. So then he said, can I write about it? Can I write a story about it? So, I mean, it just kind of, I just remembered that. But in terms of how children can contribute articles, what is the...
So like I said, in the beginning, Youngzine started out as something that we were writing, but very soon, a couple of years into it, we just started a summer program to try and see if, we could work with middle school students or high school students, just for about 4 or 6 weeks. And we really found that these kids had really, and just in those 6 weeks, we were seeing, so much growth when they would come and work with us as a small editorial team. We teach them how to take a news story, how do you research from different sources, from credible sources, because now, this whole idea of media literacy is so important, right? That's kind of what we talked about, teaching kids how to get information from credible places. And then being able to understand that and synthesize an article that can be read by their peers and by kids who are a little younger to them. So we tried that model, and it was a huge success. So then we decided to go year round with that. So now our pretty much all the articles that you see on Youngzine and the news articles are all written by high school students. These are freshmen all the way through to seniors. And the beauty, Ramya, is that sometimes, we get kids who enter but just strong writers, and, we see their articles during the freshman year. It's amazing. They get started with Youngzine. They really have to only commit to one session, which is 4 to 5 months. And these kids will come back session after session, year after year, all the way till they graduate.
They know what they're getting, right?
They know what they're getting. They tell us, we've learned so much. We've grown in so many ways. We feel like we are doing something, and we're giving back by educating, their peers or younger readers. So it's just a very, they feel they're heard. Their voices are heard. There's a place for them to express their, make an impact and have their voices heard. So that, I think, it's huge, and it really resonates for these kids. So that's one way that we have kids who are actually interning with us, and we mentor them. We also have younger readers who can submit, an original poem. For example, if your son wants to write about something, those are the kinds of articles that they would write and submit to us. Could be an original story, a report, a travelogue, something they felt when they went for a hike in nature. And So they submit those, and then we review those and publish on the site as well. So that's for the, middle school age group readers, middle school and younger. And for high school students, it's actually, we mentor them. So those are a couple of ways. So in some sense, Youngzine is a platform by students for students, or by children for children. So that's the way it is.
I love that.
Right. And this summer, we are actually going to be doing our very first youth climate steward program. So we plan to work with a very small cohort of students. And this is for high school students. And, again, this whole systems thinking that I was talking to you about. So taking them, building that understanding and taking them from knowledge to action. So that's something we're planning for, working towards, and really excited about that. So yeah, many ways that kids can get engaged with Youngzine.
What a real way to make change happen, right? With the new, and what struck a chord with me is what you said is kids are being heard. They want to be heard.
Yes.
And again, in context of our podcast, which is a choice, you can either be heard in social media, scream out, or you can be heard in real world issues. Right? So it's a choice again. So
yeah. And that's very well said when you made that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's essentially what kids use social media for. They said self-expression, and I exist, and this is who I am.
Right.
But in a way, you exist. This is who you are as to what you're doing, right? And so, in today's world of kids, how do we raise kids to be morally, ethically aware? Yes, of course, Youngzine is, a great platform to be able to do that. But even on a day-to-day conversation, what do we tell our kids? Again, in the context of choices, right? I've seen you make great choices in life, and you do that by example. By looking at you, one does that by example. And how do we actually let kids know that this is what you should be, or this is where you should be headed?
Right. Yeah. Great question. And I'm probably going to put my parent hat here. Parenting is such a learning experience. I think the biggest thing that I feel, I've always felt that, kids just come into this world as a clean slate.
Exactly.
It's purity, right? I mean, they know what right and wrong intuitively is. They have empathy. They have a sense of self. There's a confidence. They can do anything. I mean, my son in second grade, I think in kindergarten, I remember some of his parents, we'd met at a reunion a couple of years back, and they still remembered in a kindergarten video, he said he wanted to be the president of the country, so it's just their aspirations and what they want to do, it just comes right through. So I say the first thing to me is to nurture that. I think very often as parents, because we're so caught up, we feel like we know more, we kind of, tell them to behave in a certain way that we think is the right way, but really allowing them to flower. And when they ask questions, encouraging that, nurturing those questions, even if we don't know the answer, that's okay. Let's figure it out. So it's that openness, I think, is one of the things that, as I was raising, Arjun, I always felt like I was learning from him as much, if not more, than what I was teaching him. He was opening my eyes in so many different ways. So I think that is one thing, is, just nurturing that. And then letting them also know that, they're accepted as they are. And then, that they have a voice, even in family matters. I mean, if we are going somewhere, I would ask them, I'd ask him, I said, do you want to do this? Giving them that option. Those are
That's amazing.
It's important, because then that makes them feel like their voice is heard. Again, to your point, right? There are choices. Do you want to go here for dinner, or do you want to go here for dinner? What do you feel like eating? So these are all little things that just getting, the kids also engaged. So I think that's one thing, is just nurturing them, listening to their voices. And like I was telling you, right, when Arjun said, "Mom, I haven't heard you smile," to me, I could have just said, "But Arjun, I had been smiling." I could have really
but you actually absorbed it, thought about it.
I thought about it, and I had, it was like a little wake-up call for me. That this child was saying something that was very true. No denying it. I know that that previous year we were trying to push out some hardware, and I was working like crazy, and he was just speaking from within. He had just sensed it. So I think so that's one thing is that the other thing is helping them realize that they are part of a larger community. They're part of
absolutely. I think that's the key, because when they see peers and when they know that there is a purpose in the community, is when
correct
they feel that.
Correct. So if it could be going out into the nature, doing some things together, maybe even doing some social service, either doing something in nature or working in a small community, helping people. All these little things also help them realize that they are and I know, like we've talked about, our kids are very privileged. They've really grown up. They've got everything that they want, and so it's really trying to get them to realize that you're a citizen of the world. That the fact that you have this privilege is for you to give voice to the voiceless. And that voiceless could be animals and other species. It could also be other people who don't have the same opportunities. How can you use what your God-given gifts and the privilege that you have to actually give back to society? So I think so that is the other thing that I'd say it's really important when we're raising kids. The other thing that is also important is modeling that behavior. I think very often, if we are saying something but we are not modeling that, kids are so observant. They notice these little things, right?
Yeah. When there's no value, to words, then
there's no value to words. Correct. So I think as parents, that's also very important, that we are modeling the behavior. So it's been, I'm just look back at raising my own child. It has been just helping him realize that there is a certain purpose why he is in this world, and then giving him all the tools and continuing to nurture the empathy. And I got to say something here, Ramya. So Arjun, every time we would drive by from our house at an intersection, there always used to be someone who'd be standing there with a sign, right? And every time we would come there, I would have to stop and I'd have to give something. Otherwise, Arjun would get very upset and anxious. I'm talking about from when he was very young. And this one time, the light had turned green. I had sort of, just gone back. I just gone right through that signal and had turned. And he got very upset because he saw an older man standing there. And, so I ended up actually making a circle, coming back, to give that person something, because this child behind in the car seat was really upset. So again, it's, I could have chosen to move on, but then I felt like it mattered to him so much that I needed to model that and go and give that. Again, going to India was also a huge thing for us, right? So
can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm sure there are a lot of immigrants, parents, women who are listening in, and some of us are privileged to be able to go back and forth. Some of them, some of us don't have that privilege. So, but how did that make a difference? Because I know it really changed and shaped Arjun a lot.
Yes, it definitely did. So we started going to India every summer for two reasons. One is, of course, my father was not doing well. And so, summer, once I started Youngzine, I could really write and publish from anywhere. So I could afford to be in India as well. So that was one reason. The other reason was Arjun was also starting to learn Indian classical music. And his teacher was in India. So again, this was an opportunity sort of, two birds, with that one visit, right? So I could take care of my father and he could spend some time. But I think the bigger thing that I didn't realize was how India was sort of growing, it's sort of like under skin. It was all just, the country was just sort of, the people, society was just sort of, seeping through him, right? Into his skin, through his pores. Because he would just come alive. He just loved the, how the sounds and the, people dropping in, just the society, the extended family. So he was just soaking it all in. And so after about 2 or 3 trips, every year he would look forward to it. He'd say, he would say, I'm missing India. I want to go back. So one is, of course, that, he saw the extended family, but also I think he saw, I think that was a bigger lesson for him is, we would sometimes go, we had a car at home and we'd get these call drivers who would take us, either to the music class or so. And I would always engage these call drivers in conversations. I want to know about them. I want to know about their kids, what they're doing. And Arjun would be in the car listening to my conversations. And I think he just saw sort of the happiness and, even the simplicity. These people did not have much, but the way that, they were happy, joyful, just in the moment, right? It really made him realize you really don't need the kind of things that we have here to find that happiness and joy, and that people who are living with simple means are so much happier. They're just not bogged down, and so I think some of that also he sort of saw the of course in talking in all these conversations. I think as I was having the conversation, it was something that he was also
seeped into him.
He's absorbing it. So I think that was the other thing. And then, of course, seeing, the difference between haves and have-nots. I mean, that difference is quite stark in India. And I think that also builds more empathy. And I remember, we would go to a place for ice cream. He loved ice cream, so we'd always go to Arun Ice Cream. And there was a lady who would sell flowers outside. With my hair, there's really not much space to hang a flower, but every time we'd go there,
like you put like a hairpin and let it fall.
Correct, exactly. But every time we'd go to the ice cream shop, he's like, okay, mom, you have to buy some flowers from that lady because she's working. It's an honest, hard day's work, and this is not just giving money to someone. She's actually selling flowers, and we need to buy something from. So I would get a flower every time I would go in. So those were all little things that I think he observed and that seeped into him. And I sort of encouraged that because I really wanted him to have that voice again, right? Where he's saying something and then, I understand that where that's coming from.
That's great. It's just it's so enriching to hear these like little stories, right? They're little, but they're actually so large in terms of like the bigger picture. And again, it comes back to it's the choice you made to go to India, right, over the summer.
Yes.
Whereas you could have been here and then, again, amidst all the comforts, or going to Hawaii every summer, or,
correct,
just like, land up in a resort every summer. But I think the choice that you made is to go and experience that, let him experience that.
Correct.
And I think
right? You probably did that too, right? When you take them on trips, you take the kids to places outside the cities, smaller towns and villages.
So, and I think again, coming back to when I used to work in the corporate, sector, the issue was the problem was the vacation days, right? And I'm sure a lot of women or families who are watching this will resonate with that. Like now that I kind of sort of which we have kind of deviated, we're self-employed, we're doing other things. We have that privilege, right? And will not take that for granted at all. But I'm saying for people who have, say, 2 weeks of vacation, out of which 10 days are sick days off or something like that, right? So we don't have that ability. And I think that's sort of thing which really bothered me when I was working in the tech sector. So
Right.
I don't know if somebody is watching who has the power to be able to change that. And this is a universal problem in the United States, where
Right.
you have very limited. So the exposure to give your kids becomes like 1 week in Mexico. That's about it, or in a
Right.
resort in Cabo or something, as opposed to real world exposure, which is missing for kids.
Right. But I do have to say, though, like with this COVID and Omicron, I think this whole idea of working remotely has become much more accepted. It's much more mainstream. So I think when we were working, and when I was working in late 90s and early 2000s, I mean, it was just unheard of. And like I said, as a mother with a young child, and literally working till 5:30 itself, the perception was I was not putting in. But if you see now, people are choosing to move away from the Bay Area to live in different places, live closer to their families, and work remotely. So I'm hopeful that there have been some changes that COVID has brought about with remote working, and I hope that that's here to stay, because that will then allow people to have these experiences. You could be sitting in India and staying with your family during summer, and then your kids are getting that experience while you're still able to work. I mean, granted, the hours aren't most conducive, but still. Right.
I actually love that. It's actually on a positive note, right? Absolutely. Correct. That we're heading towards trust. And it's funny because I actually worked in a startup and thing which was always remote. So even before the days of all of this happened, I was working remote. But I think COVID has taught us a lot, for sure. I think and to be able to spend more time and be in the moment, right, so to speak.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
God, this is so delightful. So how have you grown, Deepa, as a person, from, because now I see two sides of you. You've told us about who you were, where you are today, this amazing thing you're doing, and on a personal growth chart. Do you think about it? Do you not think about it? Is there something you can share with our listeners that some people might resonate with? So what's your personal growth?
Absolutely. No, I've grown tremendously. I went into an area that I didn't know anything about. I left, like I said, leaving a career, where, I mean, all my education had prepared me for that. I'd been in that industry for 17 years. It was all I knew. It's the only thing I knew. So transitioning from that into a space where I didn't know anything about was a huge change. It's just a calling that probably prompted me there. Yeah. But obviously it meant I was learning on the job, right? And so there are all these, there are days that are good. There are days that are, it's just not going as we want them to go. And I think the things that I learned through these experiences, I mean, there have been times where I would just think, did I make this right choice? Yeah. Early on, I'm talking about a Youngzine's journey, right? You apply for a grant and it doesn't happen. All these things, you start questioning. And so I went through that. But I'd say, in that process, I guess I was also growing deeper roots. And I was starting to also develop, starting to become more resilient, having more patience and kind of thinking all right, so this is not working. It's because, that door is not meant to open. That is probably not where Youngzine is going to grow. So, it was just learning to go with the flow. I think so. That was one of the lessons. And also just getting more confident in what my North Star is in terms of, there was, this faint message that really got me going on Youngzine with the kids, but now I feel like it's really coming together with this whole new direction around, environment and climate literacy and sustainability, building that kind of understanding in kids. I feel like it's really coming together. And so I'd say that all these experiences have been teachers, and I've sort of learned to look at my life that way. I think even prior to Youngzine, but I definitely think that we are constantly growing, and just because something didn't work out, it's just an opportunity to say, okay, how can I do this better, or what should I be changing as a result. So I think it definitely, helped me from that standpoint. But yeah, it's it just makes you more sure of what your path is. And I think I feel like I'm at that point now. Early on, there wasn't that much clarity, but then I think where I am today, I feel much more confident about the trajectory for Youngzine, and for my personal journey as well. I feel I'm much more settled. There isn't that anxiety. I feel like even if I've made a difference in one child, I mean, like I said, these kids who are writing for us, they share sometimes even one of them shared what they wrote on a college essay about, how Youngzine shaped them. It's just very gratifying. It's invaluable.
Absolutely.
It's very rewarding. So, I'm just looking at, okay, you're making one, sort of one child at a time. If you're making a difference, then it's worth it. It's a life well lived. So I think that perspective also has certainly changed. And yeah.
Oh God, I absolutely love that. And the thing that you said about not having anxiety, right? A lot of us suffer from that. I would say each one of us has moments like that during the day. We get anxious about something. But I think when you have an intent that's higher than oneself, that the anxiety kind of goes away.
Yes.
And that's what, that I can see that Youngzine has, you brought it to Youngzine, and Youngzine has brought it to you. Whatever it is, it's kind of like, it's the higher intent, higher purpose, which is what has shaped you today. So that's just
very well said. Yes, it's when you start looking at something as larger than you, then you kind of really just every day you get up in the morning just ready to go. And I can, it's such a shift from when I was in technology towards the end, where it was a grind getting up and going.
Correct.
And now, my days are sometimes really long, but I'm ready to get up next morning and go. And so I think that's definitely
that is just so great to hear. And I guess a lot of people want to do it, but something is stopping them. And I think, stories like this should really, inspire them and say that, hey, this is not what you're meant for. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are happy with what they're doing too. Yes. So it's, that's all fine. But I think for people who have, a different set of, standards in terms of what are we doing higher than ourselves? Like, am I just going and creating this one little thing today, or is this a long-term thing that I'm trying to do? And even if it changes one or two today or in the week, I feel a lot better.
Absolutely. I think for some people, that is their work. Work is their passion, and whatever work they're doing, it's technology and so on, and that's great. But for those who are feeling like there's something more they should be doing, I'd say then listen to that voice that's within. It knows what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And it may not be very clear in the beginning. Mine was certainly not clear, right? But if you can afford to, I mean, of course, that's the other thing as well. That's the other, if you're in a position, that's again, each person has to make their choice. But maybe you can start doing in a small way. Maybe continue doing what you're doing, but then start dedicating some time to follow this inner voice, because it might lead you to new doors that you would never have thought about. And so I think that is key. Is there's a sense within each of us what our calling is, what we're meant to do, and we just need to hear that. It's a softer voice. The head voice is always louder. That's the one that tells us, what we need to be doing to, pay the next rent and so on. So certainly that is important, but same time, it's heed that voice, I'd say.
The voice of the head and voice of the soul, right? So it's kind of like, and how do you balance those two is the question. So
correct. And I guess each of us have to find that, right? That balance.
Yeah, and I really admire people who are at ease with that. Whether it's people who don't think about it at all, are happy, or people who like, somebody like you and me who have this different thing, and okay, we find the sort of longer route and at peace with it.
Yes.
So so either way, I think is peaceful.
Correct. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
This has been so great, Deepa. I could chat with you for hours, as we do offline all the time. But is there anything else you'd like to share? I actually had one more question to you, which was when you wake up, like on a day-to-day basis, right? When I wake up, sometimes I have things planned. Most of the days, I don't have my day very, very well laid out. But somebody like you, I know, is very disciplined, and you might have it. Like, can you share with us when you wake up, what is it that you do? Because it's an unusual role. That yours is an unusual role. So what is it that you do? Yeah, like in terms of what choice you make to do.
Okay. Yeah. So again, just as you, right? We all, as when we take as the founders and so on, wear so many hats.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things is just being organized about what it is that I need to get done. So that's something I do on a sort of a weekly level. I just look at what do I need to get done this week. I just have my weekly diary. So that was one good thing that I've really gotten into is having a diary that I write down what I'm supposed to get done that week. Down all my meetings and everything that I know of. So that's my weekly.
And you put that down on the weekend, or?
Yeah, I do it on Monday morning as soon as I wake up, or or Sunday evening. So Sunday evening or Monday morning, I do a quick look at what's ahead, what needs to get done. On a daily basis, I make sure that I'm, balancing the, nourishing the soul and the, along with, doing the mind as well. So the mornings, definitely try to get something, and I'm into yoga. So I try to do yoga a couple of times a week in the mornings, some sort of exercise. But I really do find my peace with yoga. A little bit of meditation or journaling. So it might just be, a 10 minutes reading some quick passage or something and reflecting on it. It could be journaling something. So that's sort of my morning routine is sort of get situated for the day.
Okay.
And once I'm done with that, then I can, hit the ground running and with what needs to get done. Sorry, Ramya.
Okay, no worries.
Again, thing changed. I don't know why this is doing it. Again,
there's some higher force that is saying that we should laugh. Oh man.
Oh my God.
Is it back now?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So it's back. That's weird. It's not done that before, right? In the middle.
I'm telling you, I needed a giggle break. Oh man.
So where were we? I think I was telling you about my day, right?
So the last thing you said was you journal on, you do your yoga. Yeah.
So let me again start that so that you can record it in one chunk, right? So so at a weekly level, that's what I do is just look ahead. At a daily basis, I get up in the morning. There'll be, either I do a little bit of, after my tea, it will be some journaling or reading something, reflecting on something, or it's meditating for about 15 minutes or so. So that's sort of my routine right after with my tea. And then I do yoga or some kind of half an hour workout. I find my peace in yoga. I love yoga. I do that at least 3 to 4 times a week. And then once I'm done with that, then I've got all these things laid out in terms of, what I have going that day. So then it's just, hitting the ground running, take a lot of, little breaks here and there. But in the evening, again, if my time allows, I love to go for a nice big walk, and that's a good time to listen to an audiobook sometimes. So I like to do that.
Or you'll be listening to my podcast tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So that's pretty much my weekly routine. And just meeting different people. Again, like like you're doing as well. I mean, just because you're wearing different hats, there are suddenly an opportunity that might come for a grant, then that kind of pulls me in that direction for some time. So it just it varies from week to week. But I think that's the fun part of it too, right? Yeah. It's unpredictable, and then you embrace that unpredictability and kind of just go with the flow. So I think it's just finding joy in just acting and doing what needs to be done at the moment. I think that's key, is not to get bogged down, but kind of say, okay, and it comes with, of course, like we talked about, being in touch and doing something that you're passionate about, that you're waking up every morning and you're, you feel that it's lined up with exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Then there's just that the motivation, everything just comes intrinsically.
Yeah, I was talking to some artist. There's also the series "What Do Artists Do All Day" on BBC. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a really cool series where they go and they basically just spend time with an artist on like morning to night. What do they do? I always wonder, right? I mean, we are all artists in a way, and me too. And somebody was telling me that 11 to 4 is the hardest time because the productivity level is not as much as, because we have, at least for me, when our kids are at school and before they come back, I have to finish it. I have the pressure on myself, and I feel like I've just not done enough compared to what I should have done. So it's like this huge, this whole ball of, like, I don't know. I can think of it as like, things just running crisscross. I should do this. I'm not doing. 11 to 4 essentially is like dead. And then I say, okay, I have to get it done somehow. So, there are different people have different periods of the day where they can get things done really well.
I mean, you've got young kids, right? So definitely you have much more time constraint there. For me, it's open. My son's off in the East Coast, off to college. So, I have much more flexibility with my day. Right. So those are challenges too. But that is life, right? Life is full of choices from the day you're born.
Absolutely.
It's always, every day there are choices. And I think, whenever we take a choice that's completely aligned with our value system, and it's aligned with, who we are, I think then I feel like when we are in that mode, when you're completely aligned, things happen, doors open. When we're not aligned is when all these other problems happen. I mean, I felt like, for me personally, when I was on this whole tech world, that was probably not my destiny, and that's why things were simply not working out the way that I had envisioned. But with Youngzine, yes, there have been so many challenges, but at the same time, as I was telling you, if there's one disappointment, something else opened right then to say, no, this is great, keep going. So I think that's the thing that I feel like we have choices, but if you're following that calling and we feel like we are acting from some place deep within, we're listening to that voice and following that, I feel like that's the right choice then for that moment, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone was saying, right, to kids, teach them what, more than giving them things, obviously that is first world problem, but more than giving them things, teach them what, these are the things to teach them, like voice, right? Nobody ever told me that. Nobody said, you're going to hear this voice. Nobody told me that. But if I tell, Cash and Vedant that, hey, do you hear that? Do you hear something? Something's telling you something. I don't know what it is. Only you know what it is, right?
Correct.
And I mean, I'm going to have this conversation, with them tomorrow. And things like that is what I think they need to know, because other stuff, they have information, right?
So I think on that front, the other thing that I think is good to have kids exposed to earlier is some sort of mindfulness and meditation. I think that will also help them anchor, in this world that's just so crazy and it's so full of so many choices and options, to really anchor within, to really take that pause, step back, and then really see what is that voice saying. To listen to that voice, I think first we need to shut down this other voice. And
Declutter.
Cut
Cut out the noise. So thank you so much, Deepa, for coming on my show. This has been so fun, on a personal level, as well as getting our message out there, from someone who I really love and admire. So thank you for being on my show.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure being here. Always love talking to Ramya, and I'm really, really glad that I was able to be here with you and share my thoughts here. So thank you for inviting me.
Okay, bye. Good night. Thanks.
Bye. Bye. See you. Bye.